video, I'm going to walk you through how to set your posture before you do any Pilates. I will walk you through how to set your posture in standing and in on the mat. So I'm going to start in standing first. So in standing, we're always going to start with our feet together, and then we're going to find our feet hip width apart. So we're going to open our toes into a little wedge of cake, and then we're going to align our heels with our toes. And then we're going to look down to our feet, making sure they're nice and parallel. And now we're going to focus on the weight under each foot. So we want to make sure that the weight under each foot is nice and equal and in the middle. So we're going to pretend that each foot is a triangle with a big toe, little toe and heel, the 3 points of that triangle. And we want the weight of our body to be right in the middle of that triangle. So to set this up, we're going to put our hands on our hips, and then we're going to lean forward to our toes, and then lean forward to our heels, and lean forward to our toes, and again to our heels. And then we're going to reduce each movement little by little until we come to the midpoint, where we feel that the weight of our body is nice and in the middle of each foot and equal under each foot. And now we're going to concentrate on the arch of our feet. So we want to make sure the arch of our feet is a little bit lifted. So we're going to imagine we've got threads attached to the arch of our feet, and we're pulling those threads up to just lift those arches a little bit. So we're going to roll our feet towards the outside and roll our feet into the inside, and out and in. And then the same as we did earlier, we're going to reduce those movements slowly and little by little until we feel that we are in the midpoint and our arches of our feet is nicely lifted, just enough to put a little blueberry underneath. So here we have parallel feet hip width apart, nice equal weight underneath each middle of each foot, and our arches are nicely lifted. And now we want to concentrate on our knees. We want to make sure that our knees are slightly bent. We have a micro bend on each knee, they're nice and soft. And then we're going to move into our pelvis area. So we're going to work on our neutral spine and find our center. So we're going to put hands on our hips. And we're going to pretend that our pelvis is a bucket of water. We're going to tuck our tail under and drop the water on our heels. And then tip the pelvis forward and top the water on our toes. And then tuck the water on our heels. And tip the water on our toes. Here we want to do that big movements to start with, and we want to make sure that our upper body is on holiday, so it's nice and relaxed, not moving. And as we did per the feet, we're going to reduce these movements slowly and little by little until we feel that we've come to a nice neutral spine where our bottom is tucked under and relaxed, and our hands are aligned and level with one another. We're going to relax the arms down, and then we're going to come up to our ribs. So we want to make sure the ribs are nice and soft. So imagine that you've got a pair of springs attached to your lower ribs and to your hips, and those springs have to be the same length at all time. So we don't want the ribs to come up and lengthen the springs, and we don't want the ribs to collapse and shorten those springs. You just want to make sure that the ribs are nice and relaxed, and we have equal length springs. And now we're going to concentrate on our shoulders, and here we want the shoulders to be nice and relaxed. So we're going to have a big roll backwards of the shoulders, and then we're going to melt those shoulder blades towards our bottom, imagining that we want to slide them onto our back pockets. And now we're going to concentrate on our neck and head, and imagine that we have a big helium balloon attached to our crown, to the crown of our heads. And that balloon is basically lengthening and pulling us up towards the ceiling. So it's lengthening the back of our neck and making us grow nice and tall. We also have a pitch underneath the chin. And so to hold that pitch in, we're going to tuck our chin towards our chest just a tiny bit so that we don't want to squash that pitch. And that's lengthening the back of our necks as well. And now we're going to work on finding our center or our deep core muscles engagements. Now that we have all our key elements in place, we're nice and the posture is nice and aligned. The spine is nice and aligned. So I'm going to ask you to put your fingertips on your hips. We're going to bring those fingers inwards an inch and down an inch. And we're going to try to find our core muscles engagement. So to find our center in our inner muscles engagement, we can do it both two ways. We can do it with our lower abdominals and we can do it with our pelvic floor muscles. So we're going to do it first with our lower abdominals. So I want you to imagine that you have a low slung belt around your pelvis, around here, and you want to tighten that belt a couple of notches. So fingertips on our hips, in an inch, down an inch. And we're going to take a breath in to prepare. And as you breathe out, you're going to contract or engage those lower tummy muscles and tighten that belt a couple of notches. And you should feel underneath your fingertips a little slow engagement of the muscles. It shouldn't bulge, it should be nice and slow and a low and gentle engagement. You're going to hold that engagement as you breathe in normally and take a few breaths. So that take a bit of practice. You could maybe find that you've taken a couple of breaths and that engagement is already gone. And that's okay because it does take practice. And then once you've taken a couple of breaths, you can release as you breathe out and release the contraction. So this is engaging your lower tummy muscles and finding your center with your lower abdominal muscles. The other way to find your inner core muscles and your engagement, your centering, is with your pelvic floor muscles. So we're going to do the same thing and put our fingers on our hips, in an inch, down an inch. And imagine the pelvic floor muscles as a supportive net running from the pubic bone at the front to the tailbone and the back. And this net is made of multiple layers of muscles and supportive tissue that will support your bladder and your bowel movements, and also supports your lower back and your spine. So as per the abdominal muscles engagement, we're going to take a breath in and we're going to take a breath out. And before you take your next breath in, slowly and gently draw your pelvic floor muscles net upwards. So there should be no movement of your back when setting your center, and the muscles under your fingers should gently and slowly tighten like it did with the lower abdominals. So hold this pelvic floor muscles contraction and keep breathing normally. And after a few breaths, release the engagement while keeping your lower back in a neutral position. So other cues if that cue didn't work for you, there's other cues that you can use. So putting your fingers in and down. Just imagine you want to, for example, you want to wee and pass wind, but you need to hold on. So you take a breath in, breathing out, and before you take the next breath in, you want to hold that wee in that wind. So you moving those pelvic floor muscles up. You should feel that contraction going up towards your spine. Or the other cue you could use that one, that if this one doesn't work, is you want to draw your tailbone and pubic bone towards each other, as if you were zipping them up towards each other. So keep that contraction. Take a few breaths and keep that contractions in. And as I said, if you lose the contraction, it's absolutely fine. Just release and set it up again. It will take time for those muscles to kick in. Often we find that in everyday movement, these muscles don't actually contract. They should contract, but often they got a bit lazy and the superficial muscles take the upper contract before them. Okay, so I'm going to show you now how to set your position whilst we're in our rest position or on the mat. So lower yourself down nice and gently onto your mat and come and lie on your back with your head cushion underneath your head. Here we're going to lie on our mat with our feet and knees together and our arms nice and relaxed on either side of our body. We're going to start with the feet like we did in standing. So we're going to open our toes into a nice piece of pie and then align our heels. Now our toes, our feet should be in hip width apart and our knees also. Our knees and legs and feet should be parallel as if they were on a train tracks. And now we're going to work on our neutral spine, on our pelvis. So here, just imagine we have a little Malteser in the middle of by your belly button. You're going to make a diamond with your hands, like so. You rest your thumb on your belly button and the fingertips of your fingers on your tailbone, or not your tailbone, your pubic bone, and rest the hands on your hips. So in that diamond, just imagine that your Malteser is in the middle of that diamond. You're going to tip your pelvis backwards, so squashing your lower back onto the mat, tilting or rolling that Malteser towards your belly button. And then you're going to roll the Malteser towards the mat, lifting the lower back away from the mat. And then squashing your lower back onto the mat, rolling the other way, and then back the other way. And as we did per standing, we're going to reduce those movements nice and slowly, little by little, until we come to a flat diamond where our tummy is nice and flat. The Malteser is in the middle of the diamond and our pelvis is nice and straight. We could even put a tray of drinks across the pelvis and it will stay there nice and level. Your lower back should be a little bit lifted away from the mat, just a tiny bit, big enough to put a little blueberry underneath it. So here you have your neutral spine. You're going to keep your hands on the nice and relaxed either side of your body, and we want the upper body nice and relaxed. So as in standing, we want the shoulders away from our ears, so nice and melted down towards the bottom, and remembering our peach tucked under our chin, just with our chin, tucking our chin toward our chest. And here we also have a little string at the top of our head, and it's pulling towards the other side of pulling us to the other side of the room, so making us nice and long. And now we're going to work on finding our inner core centering or core muscles. So we're going to do the same thing as we were in standing. We're going to put our fingertips on our hips, move the fingers in an inch and down an inch. And then we're going to do it with our lower abdominal muscles first. So remembering our lower slung belt across our pelvis, we're going to take a breath in to prepare. And as we breathe out, we're going to tighten that belt a couple of notches and keep that contraction as we breathe in again and out. So keeping that contraction as you breathe in normally, as long as you can. And then release. And now we're going to do it with our pelvic floor muscles. So keeping your fingertips where they are, just take a breath in to prepare. Breathing out all the way out. And before you take your next breath in, you want to tighten your pelvic floor muscles and tighten that neck and lift it up towards your heart, or up along your spine. Or if that cue doesn't work for you, you can imagine that you've got a zip that starts from your tailbone all the way to your pubic bone. And as you breathe, before you take your next breath in, you want to zip up that zip, lifting that pelvic floor, those pelvic floor muscles up. Or the other cue that I mentioned earlier, you take a breath in to prepare. And as you breathe out, breathing out, and as before you take your next breath in, you want to wee and pass wind, but you have to hold on. So you're squeezing those pelvic floor muscles to stop yourself from having a wee or passing wind. And I want you to keep that engagement as you breathe normally for a couple of breaths. Finding or feeling that little engagement underneath your fingertips. It's a gentle engagement. It shouldn't bulge. It's a gentle tightening feeling underneath your fingertips. And then release. And that's it. This is how we set our center and our position while in standing and in our rest position before we do any exercise. So you'll be doing it through every classes throughout your Pilates practice. Whenever we start a class, we'll be setting our posture and setting our center. Why don't you have a go? Thank you.